out of my house. Stay out until that DNA test proves the truth. My baby is only 3 days old. Please don't leave me outside this night.
They threw me out of the house at midnight. Me and my 3-day-old baby. In the rain. I still remember the sound. The heavy iron door slamming behind me like a gunshot. And the darkness swallowing us whole. My baby was wrapped in the only cloth I had grabbed before my mother-in-law's hands shoved me through the doorway. My stitches were still fresh. My body was still broken from labor. And I was standing outside in the cold, barefoot on wet sand, holding a child who had not yet seen the sun properly. My name is Adaeze, and this is the story of the worst night of my life and the morning that changed everything. Let me take you back. I married Emeka in 2019. He was not a rich man, but he was warm, hardworking, and he made me laugh. I loved him with everything I had. His family, especially his mother, Mama Chioma, they were a different story. From the very first day I stepped into that compound as a bride, Mama Chioma looked at me the way you look at a stray cat that wandered into your kitchen. Like I did not belong, like I was a problem she had not yet figured out how to solve. I tried. God knows I tried. I woke up before everyone in that house. I swept the compound. I cooked. I washed. I greeted her every morning on my knees the way our culture demands. But nothing was ever enough. She called me this girl. Never Adaeze. Never my daughter-in-law. Always this girl. When I got pregnant, I thought, maybe now things will change. Maybe a grandchild will soften her heart. I was a fool. The moment my stomach began to show, she started whispering. First to Emeka's aunties, then to the church women. Then one Sunday afternoon, right in front of me and 3 neighbors, she said it out loud. Said that the pregnancy did not look like her son's work. Said my eyes were too sharp and my character too free for an honest one. Said she always knew I had something to hide. I stood bare. My hands were shaking. My throat was dry. I looked at Emeka. He looked at the floor. That silence from my own husband was the first cut, and it went deep. I cried that night, not because of Mama Chioma. I had learned not to expect love from a woman who had never offered it. I cried because of Emeka. Because in that moment, when his mother cut me open with her words, he chose the floor over my face. But I stayed. I stayed because I was pregnant. I stayed because I had no money. I stayed because in our culture, a woman who leaves her husband's house during pregnancy is the one who gets blamed. Always, always the woman. So I stayed and I swallowed. And I counted the days until my baby arrived, believing somehow that everything would be better once she came. She came on a Tuesday. Her name was Chidinma, meaning God is good. And for 3 days, I held her and I believed that. I believed God was good. I believed the worst was behind me. I believed wrong. On the 3rd day after I delivered Chidinma, Mama Chioma called a family meeting. I heard them from the room, the low voices, the long pauses, the occasional burst of Igbo that I caught in pieces. My body was still swollen. My breast ached. Chidinma slept on my chest, her tiny breath warm against my skin, and I lay there listening to my fate being decided in the next room, like I was not even a person. When Emeka walked in, his face told me everything before his mouth opened. He sat at the edge of the bed. He did not look at me. He looked at the wall, and then he said the words that I will never, for as long as I live, forget. Mama is saying the baby does not look like me. I thought I had misheard it. I actually asked him to repeat it. He repeated it. I looked down at Chidima, my daughter, 3 days old, still learning how to exist in this world, and I felt something break inside me. Not dramatically, not loudly. It broke the way a dry bone breaks, quietly, completely, with no possibility of repair. Emeka, I said, and my voice was very calm, which surprised even me. Look at your daughter. Look at her. He looked. Chidema had his nose, his exact nose. She had the same gap between her front gums that all the Okonko babies had. That same gap I had seen in the photograph of Emeka as an infant that hung on the sitting room wall. She was his. She was completely, undeniably his. He saw it. I know he saw it. But Mama Chioma's voice was louder in his head than his own eyes. He said, I am not saying I believe it. I am saying it is what Mama is saying, and she is requesting a DNA test before you can continue living in this house. A DNA test for a 3-day-old baby. A baby still attached to the smell of my womb. I did not cry. I think I was too shocked to cry. I just nodded. I said, fine. Arrange the test. And while you are arranging it, where am I supposed to go? He said, you can stay in the boys' quarters at the back. The boys' quarters. A room with no ceiling fan, no window that closes properly, concrete floor, a mattress that smelled like old rain. That was where he wanted me to take our newborn daughter. I packed what I could carry with one arm because the other arm held Chidima, and I walked to that room. I did not say another word to him. What was there to say? The man I married had just told me, in the most polite and cowardly way possible, that his mother's suspicion mattered more than my dignity. I lay on that mattress and I stared at the cracked ceiling, and I made Chidema a silent promise. I will get us out of this. I don't know how, but I will. What I did not know was that the worst was still coming.
And if you're feeling this story in your chest right now, please subscribe and follow so you never miss a story like this. New stories drop every week. Now, let's continue. It was Mama Chioma's younger sister, Auntie Ngozi, who lit the final fire. Auntie Ngozi arrived that Friday evening from Enugu. She had not been told the full story, only Mama Chioma's version, which I am sure was colorful and creative and had very little to do with the truth. By the time she finished hearing it, Auntie Ngozi's face was set like concrete. She came to the boys' quarters. She did not knock. She pushed the door open and stood there looking at me on that mattress, Chidima nursing quietly at my breast, and she said, with no greeting, no softness, no humanity, you cannot stay here. This is not your house. Until we confirm that child belongs to our son, you are a stranger under this roof. I looked at her. It is raining outside, Auntie. She said, then you should have thought about that before you did what you did. I want you to understand something. At that moment, I felt no anger. I had gone past anger. What I felt was something colder and deeper, a kind of grief that sits in your stomach and does not move. Because this woman did not know me. She had never spent 1 hour in my company. She had heard a story from a woman who hated me and decided on that alone that I deserved to be thrown into the rain with a newborn baby. And Emeka, my husband, the father of my child, was sitting in the main house. He heard everything. He did not come out. That was the moment I stopped loving him. Not dramatically, not with crying or shouting. It just left, like a candle that runs out of wax. One moment it is burning, the next moment the flame is simply gone. I wrapped Chidima tighter against my chest. I picked up my bag. I walked out into the rain. The compound had a small zinc roof overhang near the gate, just wide enough for one person to stand under. I stood there. The rain was loud on the zinc above my head. Chidima was awake now, confused by the cold, her small face scrunching toward a cry that she didn't fully release. I tucked her inside my wrapper, skin to skin, and I hummed. I don't even know what I was humming, something my own mother used to sing. And I stood there in the dark, in the rain, outside the gate of my husband's family compound, and I thought, this is the lowest point. This cannot get lower than this. But here is what I also thought, and I want you to hold this because it is the part that saved me. If I survive this night, I will never be powerless again. The rain fell for 2 hours. I counted every minute. Chidima slept against my chest, warmed by my body, knowing nothing of the war being fought over her existence. And I stood. I did not sit in the mud. I did not knock on the door and beg. I stood. And sometime around 2 a.m., when the rain began to slow to a drizzle, I heard footsteps. The footsteps belonged to old Papa Ifeanyi. Papa Ifeanyi was the retired school teacher who lived in the small house directly across from the compound gate. He was in his late 70s, walked with a slight bend in his back, and was the kind of man that people in the neighborhood greeted with both hands. He had buried his wife 6 years before and lived alone, quiet and dignified. He had seen me from his window. He came out in his old raincoat, holding a torch, and he stood at his gate looking at me for a moment without saying anything. Then he said, very quietly, "How long have you been standing there, my daughter?" I opened my mouth to answer, and instead I started crying. Not the polite, controlled crying I had been managing for weeks, real crying from deep in my chest, the kind that shakes your whole body and makes no sound at first because the pain is too big for sound. He did not ask more questions. He opened his gate and said, "Come inside." He gave me his late wife's room. Clean sheets, a pillow that smelled of camphor and old lavender. He boiled water and made tea and left it outside the door without intruding. He found a small plastic basin and warm water so I could clean myself and Chidima properly. He did all of this without asking for anything, without making me explain, without looking at me with pity or judgment. I laid Chidima on that clean bed, and I looked at her small face, and I thought, they are still good people. There are still good people in this world. In the morning, Papa Ifeanyi sat across from me at his small kitchen table and asked me calmly what I wanted to do. Not what I should do, not what culture demanded, what I wanted. I told him the truth. I said I wanted the DNA test done immediately so that the lie could be buried. I said I wanted to leave that compound and never return. I said I had a younger sister in Lagos who had a room and had been calling me for months, begging me to come. I said I had a small skill. I knew how to make beaded jewelry, had been doing it since secondary school, and I believed I could build something if someone just gave me a small space to breathe. Papa Ifeanyi listened to all of it. Then he picked up his phone and called his son, a doctor who worked at the state hospital, and arranged for a DNA test to be done that same week at no cost to me. Then he said something I will carry for the rest of my life. He said, "Adeve, shame is a coat that other people try to put on you. You do not have to wear it." I wrote that down on a piece of paper that night. I still have it.
The DNA results came back on a Thursday. I was not there when Emeka received them. I heard the story later from 3 different people, which is how you know it is true. When 3 people tell you the same thing without being asked, it happened exactly that way. The results confirmed what any person with eyes already knew. Chidima was 99.9% Emeka's biological daughter. What happened next in that house, I am told, was not quiet. Mama Chioma tried to say the test was wrong. She actually said that, said laboratories make mistakes, said she still had her suspicions, said something was not right about the whole thing. And that was when Emeka's eldest uncle, who had driven in from the village specifically because he had heard what was done to me, stood up in that sitting room and said words that apparently no one had ever said to Mama Chioma in her entire life. He said, "You threw a nursing mother into the rain. based on nothing, based on your mouth and your hatred, and now you want to say the result is wrong? What kind of woman are you? They tell me Mama Chioma began to cry. They tell me Emeka sat with his head in his hands. They tell me Auntie Ngozi quietly picked up her bag and said she had to return to Enugu urgently. I was not there. I was at Papa Ifeanyi's house, feeding Chidinma and braiding a new set of beaded necklaces that his neighbor, a boutique owner, had agreed to sell on my behalf. When Emeka called me, I let the phone ring. He called 7 times. On the 8th, I picked up. He was crying. He said he was sorry. He said he should have stood up for me. He said his mother had poisoned everything and he had been weak and he knew it and he was asking me, begging me to come back. I listened to all of it, every word, and when he finished, I said, Emeka, I forgive you. I forgive you because carrying unforgiveness is too heavy and I have a daughter to carry instead. But I am not coming back. Not now, maybe not ever. Because a man who watches his wife stand in the rain and does not open the door, that man has already made his choice. I am just finally making mine. He had no answer for that. I ended the call. Chidinma was looking up at me from the mat with her big, quiet eyes, and I smiled at her. A real smile, the first real smile in a very long time. We are going to be okay, I told her. Watch.
3 months later, I was in Lagos. My sister Nneka had a single room in Mushin, small and noisy and full of life. Her neighbors cooked with their doors open. Children ran through the corridor at all hours, and every evening the smell of frying plantain drifted through the entire building. It was cramped. It was loud. It was the most alive I had felt in years. I set up my jewelry business on a small table in the corner of that room. Chidinma slept in a cot beside me while I worked. Nneka watched her during the day while I attended a short business training that a women's cooperative in the area ran for free. I learned about pricing. I learned about packaging. I learned how to photograph my pieces properly with just a phone and a piece of white cardboard. I opened an Instagram page. In the first week, I had 11 followers. 9 of them were people I knew personally, and 2 were strangers who had stumbled in. But I posted every day. Every single day I showed my work. A new piece, a close-up of the beads, the colors, the patterns. I wrote small captions about each one, sometimes about the design, sometimes just honest things about being a young mother starting over. One evening, I posted a necklace I had made, deep green and gold, the colors of the Igbo ceremonial cloth, and I wrote honestly in the caption. I did not use my full name. I just said, made this while my daughter slept. We have been through a rough season, she and I, but beauty still comes out of hard hands. I woke up the next morning to 4,000 likes and over 200 comments. A fashion blogger in Abuja had shared it. Then a UK-based Nigerian influencer had reshared that. By afternoon, my page had 11,000 followers. My DMs were full. A boutique in Victoria Island sent me a message asking for 40 pieces. A wedding planner in London asked if I shipped internationally. I sat on that small bed in Mushin, Chidinma in my lap, phone in my shaking hand, and I cried. But this time, the crying was the good kind, the kind that means something has shifted, the kind that means the ground beneath your feet has finally decided to hold you. I want to tell you what happened with Mama Chioma, because the story does not end without it. 6 months after I left, she fell ill. Nothing life-threatening, but she needed help in the house, and Emeka was working long hours. He called my sister and asked if I would consider speaking with his mother. Just speaking. I agreed. Not for Emeka, not for the marriage. That chapter was closed, and I had accepted it with both hands. I agreed because I am my mother's daughter, and my mother always said that when you forgive someone, you are not releasing them, you are releasing yourself. Mama Chioma came to the phone.
I could tell immediately that she was a woman who did not apologize easily. It cost her something to dial that number, and we both knew it. She said, "Adeazi, I was wrong." Not sorry, not please forgive me, just I was wrong. 4 words, but from a woman like her, those 4 words were a mountain moved. I said, "I know, Mama, I know." And I called her Mama for the first time. I had never called her that before, not because she had never earned it, but now because she had finally reached for something real. We did not become close after that. Life is not a film. Reconciliation is slow and complicated and often incomplete. But the poison was gone. And Chidinma, when she is old enough, will know her father's family without hatred between them. As for me, today my jewelry brand ships to 12 countries. Chidinma is 2 years old. She loves beads. She sits beside me at my work table and holds the strings with her fat little fingers, completely convinced she is helping. I never went back to that compound, but I carry everything that happened there. The rain, the cold, the darkness, Papa Ifeanyi's touch cutting through the night, the feel of my daughter's heartbeat against my chest when the whole world had shut its doors. I carry it all, because that night outside in the rain taught me the one thing no one could have taught me gently. It taught me that I was stronger than every single thing that tried to break me.